Hi, I'm Dong Sean. Welcome to Digging into China, where we explore China in depth to review unique perspectives. The People's Bank of China's most significant report, the Monetary Policy Implementation Report, has finally been updated with this year's second quarter data. However, I have noticed that domestic media has largely overlooked it, seemingly assuming that the macroeconomic fiscal policy is taking precedence this year, with the central bank playing a secondary role. It appears that Xi Jinping is currently placing less emphasis on monetary policy, and as a result, domestic media isn't expending effort to analyze it for him. This report, however, contains critical policy signals. The most important one addresses what I believe is the greatest macroeconomic challenge today: how to stabilize the renminbi exchange rate while combating deflation and raising prices. In today's video, I'll break down the central bank's dual strategy and explore what changes we may anticipate in China over the coming months. Let's begin by examining the current state of our renminbi exchange rate. Since the start of the year, the renminbi has strengthened against the US dollar, appreciating by approximately 1.6% and remaining stable within the 7.2 range in recent months. Yet, the renminbi performance against the euro tells a different story. It has depreciated from 7.5 at the year's start to 8.4 now. Due to this divergence, the renminbi's real effective exchange rate, REER, as measured by the Bank for International Settlements, has declined sharply this year, falling to 86. What does a declining REER signify? From a global perspective, it means the renminbi's international purchasing power is weakening. We often focus solely on the renminbi's exchange rate against the dollar, which gives the impression of appreciation, but this year is unique. The US dollar has intentionally weakened, causing most major global currencies to appreciate against it. Meanwhile, the renminbi has performed worse against non-dollar currencies, depreciating against most. This results in the renminbi appreciating against the dollar but depreciating against many other currencies. Currency depreciation typically boosts exports. In theory, the renminbi's depreciation against non-dollar currencies could enhance China's exports to non-US markets. For instance, consider Europe. The renminbi has depreciated by about 12% against the euro this year. Yet, China's exports to Europe have only grown by 7%. This is a clear case of failing to trade price for volume. Your goods are 12% cheaper, but the revenue only increases by 7%, meaning the volume growth doesn't offset the price reduction, leading to lower profits. When export companies' profits decline, this pressure feeds back into the domestic market, intensifying deflation. Now let's look at Taiwan, where China's losses are even more pronounced. The renminbi has depreciated by 7% against the new Taiwan dollar this year, but China's imports from Taiwan have surged by 10.5%, while exports to Taiwan have also risen by 10.2%. China's imports from Taiwan are 2.7 times larger than its exports. So with a depreciating currency and rapidly increasing imports, isn't this a significant loss? Here is the dilemma. To maintain export competitiveness, China must keep export goods prices low, either through currency depreciation or by further compressing domestic labor costs. However, the orders gained through depreciation aren't covering business profit losses. Thus, whether through currency depreciation or squeezing workers, the outcome is the same: worsening domestic deflation. On the other hand, Xi Jinping has come to understand deflation and is determined to address it. For 2 consecutive quarters, the central bank has prioritized promoting a reasonable price increase in its monetary policy, signaling that Xi has tasked the bank with another complex challenge: raising domestic prices without undermining export profitability. Governor Pan Gongsheng has proposed a solution: allow price increases in sectors that don't impact exports. The central bank will collaborate with the fiscal authorities to permit price hikes in the domestic service sector. For example, industries such as accommodation, dining, cultural and entertainment activities, elder care, education, and tourism could see price increases. The central bank has stated in its report that it will enhance financial support for these sectors. However, small businesses like a roadside diner shouldn't expect low-interest loans from the central bank. These smaller establishments may face closure, leaving state-owned chains and large enterprises to leverage central bank subsidies and raise prices. Additionally, public services like water, electricity, gas, public transportation, subways, and doctor office visit fees could also see price increase. To avoid raising costs for export business, utilities like water and electricity could adopt a dual-track system, increasing prices for households while offering business energy subsidies. This would alleviate the consumer price index without raising export costs. Furthermore, labor costs in the service sector could rise. For example, delivery riders have recently received pay increases, and the wages for domestic workers, elder care, and child care could follow suit. The central government has been signaling this approach for some time. This year, discussions about urban renewal, functional upgrades, and improving elder care and child care services all point to pushing the service sector towards a premium model. Higher service quality naturally leads to higher fees. I suspect Xi's push for mandatory social security contributions is also related. By raising labor costs, businesses will need to increase prices to maintain profits, contributing to CPI growth. Moreover, Xi has recently tested the public reaction to a potential rental income tax. If taxing rental income proves feasible, it could drive up rents, further boosting the CPI. However, these policies have clear drawbacks. While the CPI rises, ordinary people face greater financial strain. Utility bills, school fees, medical costs, and entertainment expenses become less affordable, further suppressing non-essential consumption. On the business side, before the service sector can raise prices, small businesses will likely be forced out, leaving only large state-subsidized enterprises capable of implementing price hikes. This will further shrink domestic demand. Soon, finding a 10-yuan bowl of beef noodles might become impossible, forcing people to cook at home. In Xi's vision, does this mean the less affluent no longer deserve to consume? Consumption is already contracting. July's economic data shows that when central subsidies decrease, retail sales of consumer goods plummet. This underscores the importance of fiscal policy. How do you raise prices without collapsing domestic demand? The answer lies in fiscal subsidies. Policies like applying subsidies where a 2,000 yuan air condition gets a 500 yuan discount allow businesses to profit while keeping purchases affordable for consumers. To enable service sector price increases, subsidies for that sector are needed. The central government has plans for this, having recently mentioned that the next round of subsidies will target services to prepare for price hikes. However, progress is slow. In June, subsidies were introduced for elder care services for the disabled, but this year's fiscal budget has largely been allocated to consumer goods trade-in programs, leaving little room for another major subsidy initiative. Instead, smaller policies like interest subsidy for consumer loans, which cost far less, are being implemented. From the central bank's perspective, this primary responsibility is stabilizing prices and the exchange rate. Whether domestic demand shrinks or consumers cut back isn't Governor Pan's concern. Thus, pushing service sector prices increase to boost the CPI is a favorable strategy for them. As long as the exchange rate remains stable and the prices rise, their objectives are met. However, fiscal policy faces challenges. It relies on tax revenue, and if domestic demand contracts, small business close and jobs are lost, the tax base shrinks, tightening fiscal revenue. Thus, fiscal policy cannot tolerate a shrinking market, which explains why we've seen some subsidy policies emerge in recent months. From Xi Jinping's perspective, his vision of a unified national market focuses on reducing fragmentation and small-scale operations, creating a more centralized, planned economy. This involves eliminating small and medium-sized enterprises and strengthening state-owned and leading private companies. Under this strategy, Xi is highly resistant to repeated fiscal subsidies as they sustain fragmented market forces, conflicting with his vision of unification. Therefore, expectations for fiscal subsidies should be tempered. Fiscal authorities may offer some symbolic subsidies, but they are unlikely to provide sustained support for small business and consumers. Conversely, the central bank's plan to raise service sector prices may be the most likely path forward. It boosts the CPI without deviating from Xi's goal of eliminating small business and reinforcing state-owned and large enterprises. Additionally, the new monetary policy report includes a notable statement for the first time: improve the efficiency of fund use and prevent idle capital. This signals that the central bank not only plans to avoid injecting liquidity, but may even tighten further, as there is already excess money in the market with insufficient credit demand. This raises the question: if fiscal policy requires ongoing subsidies, how can the central bank afford to tighten? If fiscal authorities need to issue more bonds in the second half of the year, the central bank would need to maintain loose policy to support fiscal spending, or at least keep interest rates low to ease the burden of fiscal debt. If significant fiscal measures were planned, the central bank would avoid such a statement and leave room for flexibility, perhaps simply stating it will continue moderate easing. Instead, it emphasized implement and refine before moderate easing, effectively signaling that major fiscal subsidies won't happen in the second half. Time to move on. The conclusion is sobering. The central bank's stance indicates no additional fiscal bond issuance or major subsidies are planned for the second half. Yet, the bank still needs to meet its CPI target, so it's urgently pushing for service sector price increases. Xi's aversion to subsidies aligns with his unified market vision, which has no place for small business. Ultimately, he may prioritize raising the CPI even at the cost of shrinking domestic demand to claim victory over deflation. For ordinary people, this is troubling news. Utility bills may rise, and even if they don't, your electric meter might mysteriously malfunction, adding a few extra yuan to your bill each month. Thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, please like it, drop a comment below, and hit the subscribe button right here. It really helps YouTube suggest my video to others. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then, be well.